So look at the progression of the development of a simple weapon. I develop a spear, and I determine that this spear is what I'm going to use in a combat. When I use that spear on you and wound you in a combat, next time you will think through that experience, or your child, if you don't live to tell the story, will think through that experience and realize that, oh, if you have this spear, which means you can kill me, but if I develop some kind of a shield, if I take an iron and put it a handle, I can develop a shield that I can use to protect myself from that spear. So it becomes a higher notch. So the meme of the weaponry has increased in its manifestation in our minds, and it's taking its own form. So it has increased. And from that shield, you say, okay, because you have developed shield, in the next combat, I have to develop a much grander and sophisticated spear or weapon that can break your shield. And so I develop an arrow or an arrow and a bow that can go farther. And from there, you go to guns. And from guns, you go to get nuclear weapons. So when I capture you and I take your weapons and I destroy them and I take them to my land and I erase them, what I'm doing is that I am actually erasing your memory and your memes. And your memes are closely tied with your genes. They are closely tied with your identity. That's who you are. So if I take away those things, if I take away your spears, take away your weapons, take away your clothes, take away your artifacts, take away everything that reminds you of where you're coming from, you no longer remember who you are. And I tell you, I am an extension of you. The only recollection that children have of history is actually their slave master. And of course, they have to adopt their slave master. And in that sense, you have successfully obliterated both the physical representation of their mental reality, their memories. So this is the reason why, this is what actually happened that made these weapons, we could not tell anything about them. We could not know anything about, we didn't actually know how they look like. Even some of them we have today are just a figment of imagination. It's almost like a figment of imagination, because almost all of these things have been destroyed. And then, so when these artifacts are destroyed and carried away and obliterated and replaced with their own artifacts, which are the guns that we have today and all of that, then it is actually an erosion of our own memories. And that is what happened to the Africans. And then because of that, it brings to the very question who we are. We don't even know what we are, what those things symbolize, and what our identity actually symbolizes. Because even your weapons symbolize a lot of things. If your father developed a specific weapon, that weapon carries within it the whole memory of what he went through in order to develop it. So when you get that weapon, you're actually, the symbolism is the memory. So when you get that weapon, you're inheriting both the physical entity, the physical material, that's the weapon, and the memory that your father has that was built into that weapon. So you're inheriting two things, your father's memory and the physical weapon itself. So when that weapon is taken away from you, you've not only lost the physical protection for yourself, that's the physical reality, you've also lost the memory. So you become, you are at miss, you don't even know what to do. So it results to an identity crisis. And this happened across the board, in books, in culture, in language, you name it, anything at all. You're just using weapons here as a frame of reference.
Thank you very much for that. That is where we are today, in a state of confusion. Because some people, I've interviewed some historians where we are hard to really look at the issue of, look at who even came to Africa. These are really, in number, they were very few compared to who they wanted to dominate, because Africa is a very huge land. There are a lot of people in different parts of it. very small countries in Europe came and they managed to dominate over them. Since then, we have never risen from the dust. So the question really is, to what extent is the African identity crisis problematic in today Africa?
Okay, so to make sense of that question, I'm going to start with even what you said. On the neurobiological level, very basic. For your brain, the way your brain functions is such that the things that you recognize around you, the book that you're looking at, your laptop, that laptop you're looking to, you're working with, your clothes, everything around you, the colors that you recognize, the lights that your eyes is able to recognize, the smell, the sense of smell that you're able to recognize, all of these things, they're practically memories stored in your neurons, stored in at the very fabric of your being. So when you look at majority of what your mind does, let's say you look outside and then you look at a tree, your mind is not, your brain is not actually perceiving the tree as it is in itself. Your mind is making a calculated, sophisticated and calculated guess of what the photons, the signals, the light rays that are hitting your retina, and it's entering through the eyes, connecting with a lot of nerve signals through the occipital lobe at the back of your head, and it's hitting your hippocampus, which is the memory centers of your brain. And that part of the brain is interpreting the signals that it's getting from outside, and it's telling your brain, this is a tree. It's creating the picture of a tree. So, but this is not to say, even the colors that you see outside, this is basically, in reality, there's no true thing as red or black or any of those things. These are the way your brain is actually making sense of the world and creating a stable memory that will allow you to make a calculated guess and prediction about the world and maintain some level of regularity or consistency for you to be able to process and interpret the world. So when you look at that tree and your eyes are getting the signals, it is from the information in your brain that you're able to interpret that and make sense of what you're seeing. So basically the kind of things that your perceptual faculty, all the things that you're perceiving, your ability to make sense of it comes from the memory that you already have. Now, this thing is very, very important. This I'm explaining is really important because it's at the fabric and the core of our being. The hippocampus, that's the part of the brain that operates, that actually synthesizes memory, that plays a huge role in our memories, it plays a huge role in our ability to perceive the world, because your perception is usually tied to your memory. And then your ability to even remember things is usually tied to the hippocampus and the memory systems of your brain. Your ability to make projections into the future, to imagine, is tied to your memories. So a good example is a guy was visually impaired right from birth. And at the course of his life, I think during the age of 30s or so, his vision was actually restored. But even though his vision was actually restored at that age, he was still not able to see the world in the same sense that you and I see the world, because he had passed through, because growing up as a child, once you start seeing, the time you start perceiving what your mind is doing, your brain is doing, it is recording the signals, recording the light rays that are coming in, and it's actually creating memories from those things. After creating, it's going to make a map of the world and it's going to store them in your memory, so that even if you become blind tomorrow and later your sight is restored, you can still reach back to your memories and make sense of the world. Now, that guy was unable to see even after his vision was restored. And this connects really very well with the African scenario. I'm getting to that. He was unable to see after his vision was restored because he has no memory of what to see, no memories to perceive the world. So your senses are not just, it is not only your senses that do the work in the perception of the world. It's actually the memories, a symbiotic relationship between the memories that are stored in your mind and the senses and the perceptions the senses are getting. Now, this goes to show you that without memories, you cannot perceive. Without memories, you cannot perceive. Perception is about information processing. So without memories, you cannot properly process information. Hold that there. When the prefrontal cortex of our mind developed, the prefrontal cortex part of our brain developed, we developed the capacity to be able to imagine, to make abstractions, and to be able to project into the future what we are going to create. Now, for us to make projections into the future, as you are there now, you're planning on the next guest of your podcast. You're planning on the things that you're going to do after now. Where are you doing that planning from? I'm asking. Obey. Where are you doing your planning from?
Okay, from the memory that I already have in my head, because I've
Thank you. Of how the world works, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to plan for the future from the memory that you already have. If you have a memory of that you have $5 million in your account and you want to start off a business, you're going to be planning from the memory of the $5 million that you have in your account. True or false?
Yeah, true.
If you don't have a memory of that $5 million, you're going to be planning from the memory of the nothing that you have. You'll be looking for how to borrow from people. True or false? True.
Yeah, true.
If your father, let's say, for example, that your father was a billionaire and then you are born, but you do not know that your father was a billionaire and had $5 billion in your account, and you want to plan your future, are you going to be planning from the memory of your father's $5 billion?
Not at all. I have no idea.
Thank you, not. So you cannot imagine a future without a better memory. So it is your memory that determines the future that you're going to imagine. If your memory is bad, you cannot imagine a better future. If your memory is bad, you cannot create a better future because it's the future borrows from what already is. Now, how does this affect the African?